The final transmission crackled, with a question that still haunts the airwaves. How are we supposed to cross this after that just static? The south face of Annapurna isn't just a mountain. It's a monster widely considered the deadliest climb on Earth. That silence marked the end for Park Young-seok, the legendary tiger, along with his team Shin-dong-min and Kang Ki-seok. They were gone, claimed by the ice forever. You have to ask yourself, why? Here was a man who had already done the impossible, conquering all 14 peaks above 8,000 meters and reaching both the North and South Poles. He had earned a comfortable retirement. So why step back into the void? To call it madness is lazy. This is a story about the steep price you pay for refusing to live a mediocre modern life. The legend didn't start on a peak, but with a gamble. Picture this: tossing the keys to your only apartment onto a table, betting your family's shelter on a ghost of a chance at survival in sub-zero winds. Flashback to the late 1980s. Seoul is exploding with development cranes reaching for the sky and neon signs buzzing with the energy of a new era. Everyone else is chasing corporate titles and steady paychecks, but Park Young-seok, he's blind to it. He's young, completely anonymous, and obsessed with snow-capped giants. While the rest of the world looks horizontal for success, Park looks vertical. He doesn't want a career. He wants the Himalayas. But dreams don't pay the bills, and high-altitude mountaineering is a rich man's game. Back then, it was an exclusive club for the elite. We're talking equipment that weighed as much as a person, logistical nightmares, and climbing permits with price tags that could feed a normal family for years. Park hustles. He's banging on boardroom doors, waving maps, eyes burning with intensity. And the corporate suits, they give him nothing. Why invest in a nobody planning to die halfway across the globe? Every no hits him harder than oxygen deprivation ever could. The clock is ticking. The climbing season is creeping closer, and his window of opportunity is slamming shut. He looks at his life, his modest home, his young wife, who supports his crazy dream maybe more than she should. He's not a trust fund kid. There's no inheritance waiting in the wings. He has exactly one chip to play the deposit on their apartment. That money is the literal roof over his family's head, the only thing standing between them and the streets in a volatile economy. A war breaks out in his head. Logic screams that he's losing it. Gambling your family's safety for a personal ego trip. Most people would call that unforgivably selfish, but the siren song of the summit is too loud to ignore, drowning out every rational thought. Then comes the decision that makes your blood run cold. Park walks into the bank. The pen hits the paper. He mortgages the home. In one signature, he rips the safety net out from under his wife and child, trading their foundation for nylon tents and a plane ticket to Nepal. The bridge is burned. There is no plan B if the mountain spits him out or if tragedy strikes his family is homeless. The pressure on his back is heavier than any 80-liter pack he'll ever carry. He boards that plane as a man who has pushed all his chips to the center of the table. That cash stripped from his home's walls feels heavy in his pocket. It changes the climb. Now every step up the slope requires superhuman effort because he's painfully aware of the cost. He knows exactly what he paid for this ticket to the death zone. The gamble is live. At 7,000 meters, gravity doesn't negotiate. Park Young-seok isn't just climbing. He's staring down the barrel of the southwest face of Everest, one of the most terrifying walls of rock and ice known to man. Forget the tourist lines you see on the news today. This is a vertical hellscape of black granite and bulletproof ice. One gust of wind here can flick a human off the face like a crumb. It's 1991, and for a rookie to attempt this route, it's bordering on suicidal. Even the seasoned Sherpas are looking at the slope with dread. But Park, he's possessed. His ambition overrides his survival instincts, pushing him upward into air so thin that every single breath feels like breathing through a straw. He's redlining claws dug into the crust. Then the mountain decides to teach him a lesson. At 7,000 meters, the nightmare scenario unfolds. The footing snaps. Gravity takes the wheel. In a heartbeat, the sky and ground swap places. He's ragdolling down the sheer face, smashing into rock outcrops and ice jagged enough to cut glass. He falls 150 meters, that's a 45-story building. Statistically, he's a dead man walking, or rather, a dead man falling, and then the impossible. Motion stops. Park lies crumpled on the slope, battered, dazed, but breathing. A pocket of deep powder snow caught him acting as a cushion. In the alpinist world, they don't call that luck. They call it a divine intervention. As the adrenaline fades and the pain sets in, he looks up at the terrifying distance he just fell. Any rational human being takes this as a cosmic warning. Go home. Get a desk job. Stay alive. This should be the end of the story. But Park isn't wired like us. He doesn't feel fear, he feels a cold, electric fury. Instead of gratitude for survival, he feels a surge of primal power. He realizes something profound: the mountain might punish weakness, but it bows to absolute audacity. Right there, wiping the snow off his bruised body, a philosophy is born. He looks at his trembling hands and makes a vow that will define his legacy. He whispers the words, "If a tiger loses its wildness, it's no longer a tiger." He doesn't retreat. 2 years later, he's back at base camp. But the wide-eyed dreamer is gone. He's returned as a predator with a vendetta. This isn't sport anymore. It's a grudge match between a man and a mountain. May 16th, 1993. His crampons bite into the final ridge. He stands at 8,848 meters, the roof of the world. All the fear, the debt, and the trauma evaporate in the thin air of victory. But coming down doesn't satisfy him. It only makes him hungrier. Everest isn't the finale, it's the prologue. Park gazes out across the jagged Himalayan horizon, and he doesn't see scenery, he sees a hit list. A plan takes shape, one so aggressive it scares the veterans, the 14 8,000ers. He wants to hunt down every single peak in the death zone. It's not a sprint. It's a marathon of survival played out over years. Fast forward to 1996. Next target, Annapurna. Just saying the name makes seasoned climbers sweat. It's a slaughterhouse of avalanches and collapsing ice. Statistically, until 2012, the mountain killed 30% of everyone who tried to climb it. Let that sink in. 1 out of every 3 climbers doesn't come home. It's the most volatile, avalanche-prone powder keg in the range. The routes run directly beneath hanging glaciers, literally swords of Damocles, made of ice, and through narrow chutes where skill doesn't matter, only luck. Park treats it with deadly seriousness. He picks the classic line, minimizing risk. And strangely, the mountain decides to let him pass. May 4th, 1996. The sky is crystal clear. The mountain is sleeping. The climb is eerie in its smoothness. Park runs this expedition like a military operation, employing siege tactics to overwhelm the peak. He strangles the mountain with logistics chains of camps, kilometers of fixed rope, and a supply line that doesn't quit. He moves methodically, meter by grueling meter, mastering the art of patience and energy conservation. This is the crucible where a talented kid becomes a world-class operator. Every ice screw he twists into the wall, every tent he pitches in a gale, builds his armor. He realizes that climbing is manual labor at the limit of human endurance, and he decides to outwork everyone. But this methodical approach is just the warm-up. He's building a foundation for something insane. The patient strategist who waits weeks for a weather window is about to become a force of nature. Fresh off Annapurna, he drops a bombshell plan that leaves the climbing community gasping 5 8,000ers in 1 calendar year. In 1997, he walks into his sponsor's offices and throws down the gauntlet. He spreads out a map that violates every rule of physiology. Usually a trip to the death zone requires months of recovery. Park wants to chain them together like a grocery run. The experts look at his itinerary and see a suicide note written in exhaustion. But Park's confidence is infectious. The sponsors stop seeing a risk and start seeing a pioneer who has forgotten how to be afraid. They cut the checks for the most ambitious adventure of the decade. The gun goes off and Park sprints. The 1997 season is a blur. He knocks off Dhaulagiri without catching his breath, his mind already halfway to Pakistan before his boots hit base camp. A quick flight, a gear swap, and he lands in the Karakoram. The real test of human durability starts now. Park doesn't just climb Gasherbrum 1, he conquers it and immediately throws himself at Gasherbrum 2 without pausing to catch his breath. Completing a double summit like that is rare. It requires a level of stamina that borders on insanity. By the time autumn rolls around, he's already charging up Cho Oyu, capping off a mind-blowing season where he circled 4 separate 8,000ers. These ancient peaks, which usually demand months of siege-like tactics, seem to bow down one after another before his relentless assault. When the calendar turned to the end of 1998, he snatched a 5th jewel for his crown Manaslu. His style wasn't just fast, it was aggressive, almost violent in its vertical speed. It was a staggering display of raw power that forced the entire mountaineering community to pay attention. The press and his fellow climbers stopped seeing him as just another guy with an ice axe. They realized they were witnessing a phenomenon. Because of this unstoppable predatory drive to reach the top, the world christened him the Tiger of the Mountains. By the year 2000, Park Young-seok had already trampled over the most technically nightmarish summits on the map, including the monstrous Kangchenjunga and Makalu. He wasn't just surviving these death zones, he was dominating them. He is checking peaks off his hit list with an efficiency that is honestly terrifying, moving with the precision of a Swiss train rather than a man fighting Mother Nature. Yet there is still one gaping hole in his resume, a void shaped like a razor-sharp pyramid of ice. K2. It is the one peak that climbers whisper about with trembling voices, the savage mountain famous for its absolute lack of mercy. In the summer of 2001, his expedition team touches down in the rugged Karakoram Range. This isn't just another routine trip up a slope. It is the grand finale of an epic saga, with the eyes of the entire South Korean nation glued to his progress. You could cut the tension in base camp with a knife. The air is thick with anticipation and dread. K2 has zero tolerance for arrogance or mistakes. Its faces are punishingly steep, offering nowhere to rest, and the weather can turn from clear skies to a blinding whiteout before you can even zip up your parka. Park knows the stakes are astronomical. His legendary reputation, a decade of blood and sweat, and the patriotic hopes of his countrymen are all hanging by a thread. He stares up at the ominous black triangle of the summit and visualizes the finish line of his life's marathon. On July 22nd, the team initiates their final desperate push. Park moves into the notorious bottleneck, a narrow, suicidal chute of ice, sitting beneath a terrifying overhang of glacial seracs ready to collapse at any moment. Panic here means death. Only ice-cold focus can save him. Every time he kicks his crampons into the bulletproof ice, he inches closer to his destiny. Suddenly, the impossible slope begins to flatten. There is no more up left to climb. Park Young-seok stands triumphantly on the summit of K2, breathing the thin air at an altitude of 8,611 meters. At that precise second, the radio at base camp explodes with the news of his victory. Park has become the first Korean in history to secure the Himalayan crown. All 14 of the world's 8,000-meter giants now lie beneath his boots. But the world isn't just shocked by the feat itself. They are floored by the sheer mathematics of his timing. You have to remember this man kick-started his journey by gambling everything, mortgaging his own home back in 1993, and he crossed the finish line in July of 2001. That is a span of just 8 years and 2 months. For that era, it was a result that defied logic. Park didn't just climb the roof of the world. He tore across it with the velocity of a hurricane. He stands there at the absolute zenith of his fame, an untouchable champion, staring past the horizon. But if you looked closely, you wouldn't see peace in the tiger's eyes. The blueprints for a new, even more dangerous dream are already being drawn in his mind. On a brighter note, the house was finally safe from the bank, and for the first time in forever, his family could exhale knowing their future was secure. Picture a runner who has just smashed the record for the world's longest, most grueling marathon. He stops, catches his breath for maybe 2 minutes, and then immediately turns to the officials and asks, "All right, where's the starting line for the next one?" That was Park. For 99% of climbers, bagging all 14 8,000ers is the end of the road, a time to retire and write a memoir. But when Park Young-seok looks at a globe, he doesn't see what he's done. He sees the blank spots he hasn't touched. The Himalayas suddenly feel too cramped for his ambition. He has conquered the vertical world, so he decides to shift his vector entirely. His new obsession is horizontal. Park locks his target on a challenge of astronomical difficulty, the Explorer's Grand Slam. To complete this mythical quest, he has to summit the highest peak on every single continent, and then ski all the way to both the North and South Poles. It is a checklist designed to break the human spirit. He is determined to become the ultimate survivor, a man who can thrive in any hellscape on Earth. First, he treats the 7 Summits challenge like a warm-up lap. The polar freeze of Denali in Alaska, the isolation of Vinson Massif in Antarctica, the heights of Elbrus in Europe, he ticks them off with frightening speed, treating them like mere training sessions. But the true nightmare awaits him at sea level on the planet's frozen caps. Down here in the polar latitudes, the game changes entirely. The enemy isn't just thin air anymore. It is a piercing, soul-crushing cold and an infinite white silence. In this world, you aren't fighting gravity to go up. You are fighting friction to go forward. Instead of a backpack, you are harnessed like a mule to a sled, weighing over 100 kilograms. It is back-breaking, agonizing labor, performed at temperatures of 40 degrees below zero. In the 2004 season, Park heads to Antarctica. He treks all the way to the South Pole, completely unsupported, no resupply drops, no outside help, just him against the ice. For 44 grueling days, he wages war against sastrugi, sharp frozen ridges of snow and winds, powerful enough to knock a grown man flat. Every single step is a battle of will. His body is running on fumes, burning reserves that theoretically shouldn't even exist. Yet against all odds, he reaches the bottom of the world. One final boss remains the North Pole. It is April 2005. The Arctic welcomes him not with solid ground, but with drifting ice and patches of open black water. He is forced to cross treacherous gaps where one slip means sinking to the bottom of the ocean with all his gear. It is a survival race across a treadmill of shifting ice floes that change by the minute. On April 30th, Park arrives at the exact spot where all the meridians converge. In that instant, he rewrites the history books. Park Young-seok becomes the very first human being to complete the full set, the 14 8,000ers, the 7 summits, and both poles. The officials from the Guinness Book of World Records confirm the impossible. He is the world's first achiever of the True Explorer's Grand Slam. What was once considered physically impossible for a single lifetime had been done. He proved that for a man like him, limits were just imaginary lines, whether in the sky or on the ice. He now possesses everything an adventurer could dream of: an absolute world record and living legend status. Logic dictates this is the perfect time to hang up the boots. But right at the pinnacle of his glory, Park realizes a terrifying truth. A quiet, comfortable life scares him more than any avalanche ever could. In 2006, Park makes a choice that radically alters his life's trajectory. He abandons the race for numbers and records, turning his obsession toward quality. His new mantra is pure alpinism. This means going where no human has ever stepped, forging brand new routes up the planet's most terrifying walls. A colossal and daunting project takes shape, in his imagination, the 3 Great Walls. He plans to blaze new Korean routes up the sheer south faces of Everest Lhotse and Annapurna. This isn't sport anymore. It is the higher mathematics of mountaineering, where a single variable out of place equals a fatal result. But for a suicide mission like this one, Tiger isn't enough. He needs a pack. He can't use seasoned veterans who are used to luxury base camps and bottled oxygen. They're too soft. He needs raw hunger. Park goes hunting for climbers who have that same maniacal fire in their eyes that he had in his youth. He begins assembling a new squad and discovers 2 young men whose names are destined to be linked with his: Forever Lee Hyung-jo and Oh Hee-jun. They are young, incredibly strong, and they look at Park as if he were a living god. An intense chemistry ignites between them, a bond deeper than what most siblings share. Park takes them under his wing, acting like a protective older brother. He sees his own reflection in their ambition. During their brutal training and expeditions, he passes down not just technical skills, but his entire philosophy, his wildness. He teaches them how to read the subtle language of the ice, how to listen to the warnings in the wind, and most critically, how to keep moving when everyone else would quit. They become extensions of his own will, his extra limbs on the vertical face. They train together, eat together, and plan the assault together. The trio evolves into a single organism ready to breach the Himalayas' most impregnable fortresses. Now Park feels ready for the greatest battle of his career, because standing behind him are men he trusts more than he trusts himself. The spring of 2007 on the southwest face of Everest begins as a masterclass in willpower and technique. Park's team operates like a precision-engineered machine, biting their axes into one of the most difficult walls on Earth. They aren't here to retrace footsteps. They are here to draw their own line in the snow. The labor is relentless, but they are making progress fixing ropes all the way up to 8,000 meters. It seems as though the wall, once so intimidating and inaccessible, is finally starting to crack under their pressure. The intoxicating scent of victory hangs in the thin air, but the Himalayas are patient hunters. May 14th becomes the day Lady Luck turns her back on the expedition completely. They establish an assault camp at 7,700 meters. Inside the tent are the 2 young men Park considers family, Lee Hyung-jo and Oh Hee-jun. They are prepping for the final summit push, checking their gear and waiting for the sun. But instead of the dawn, a permanent darkness descends. A massive slab of snow and ice shears off from the upper sections of the face. In a heartbeat, the camp, the tents, and the men are erased from existence, buried under tons of compacted snow. Park Young-seok, who was positioned further down the mountain, realizes with horror that the unthinkable has just happened. He hasn't just lost climbing partners, he has lost the brothers he personally led into the death zone. The search efforts yield no miracles. The mountain has claimed them for good. For the Tiger, a man who made a career out of staring down death and winning this blow is shattering. His legendary armor of fearlessness finally cracks. His colleagues can see the shift in his gaze immediately. That predatory glimmer is gone, replaced by a heavy, suffocating grief. For the first time in years, Park feels true fear. But it isn't fear for his own life. It is the crushing horror of being responsible for the lives of others. His famous tiger instinct, once sharp as a razor, has gone quiet. It has been suffocated by a heavy blanket of survivor's guilt. Most men would have hung up their crampons right then and there, unable to even glance at a snow-capped peak without breaking down. Park is standing right on that precipice, ready to walk away forever. But deep in his gut, that scorching grief begins to harden into resolve. It hits him. Quitting isn't an option. He has no right to drop the torch his fallen brothers died carrying. He has to go back. He has to finish the mission, so their sacrifice actually means something. By 2008, he is back in the arena, hurling himself against the mountain's face. He battles through a frozen hellscape to reach 8,200 meters, only to get hammered by hurricane-force gales. The mountain isn't just resisting, it is laughing at him, slamming the door shut right in his face. Park drags himself back down, grinding his teeth in pure frustration, but look at his eyes. There is no defeat there, only a chilling vow to return. Fast forward to May 2009. Attempt number 3. The air at base camp is so thick with tension you could cut it with an ice axe. Everyone knows the score, one slip up and it is over. Park rallies his elite guard, Shin Dongmin, Kang Ki-seok, and Jin Janchan. They gear up not just for a climb, but for all-out war. The route is so inhumanly brutal that they strap on oxygen tanks this time. Survival takes precedence over style. What follows is a 15-hour marathon of agony on a vertical nightmare. They scramble over jet-black rock and bullet-hard ice, moving in perfect sync like a single living creature. Up there, time warps. Minutes drag into hours, the air thick and resistant like molasses. Their muscles are screaming for mercy, and the frost is biting through their layers. But Park is a machine. He refuses to slow down, knowing that momentum is life. Then on May 20th, the vertical world flattens out. They stand on the roof of the world, stepping where no human foot has ever trod. They etch a new scar onto Everest's face, the Park Route. It marks the first time South Korea has claimed a new line on the planet's tallest peak. The climbing world goes wild. The legends at Explorers Web don't just nod, they crown it the absolute best expedition of the season. But for Park, the magazine covers and awards are just noise. The real victory is quiet. He kept his word. Up there in the eternal ice, he has carved a silent, towering monument to the friends he lost. The debt is paid. Park comes down from the clouds in 2010 only to walk straight into a different kind of storm. This isn't a blizzard. It is a media hurricane tearing through boardrooms and headlines. The whole of South Korea is in a frenzy of celebration. Their golden girl, Oh Yoon-sun, claims she is the first woman in history to conquer all 14 8,000ers. Flags are waving, TV specials are airing, but among the serious mountaineers of the world, nobody is clapping. There is just a heavy, awkward silence. Her Spanish rival, Idurne Pasaban, throws down the gauntlet, publicly claiming the Koreans' ascent of Kangchenjunga was faked. The controversy hits a fever pitch. The Korean Alpine Federation has no choice but to call in the big gun Park Young-seok, the living legend, to join the inquiry commission. The unspoken expectation is clear: protect the national hero. Just nod, rubber stamp the record, and keep the party going for the millions of fans. But Park isn't a politician. He looks at those summit photos with the cold, unforgiving eyes of a master climber. He dissects the reports with the precision of a surgeon. When he delivers his verdict, it hits like a grenade. He says it plain: the Kangchenjunga climb is a lie. Oh, Yoon-sun stopped short of the true summit. It is a devastating blow. With one sentence, Park shatters his compatriot's world record and torpedoes a massive PR machine. The public turns on him, calling him a traitor to his country. But the tiger doesn't care about popularity. In the death zone, honesty is the only law. If you lie about the climb, the risk means nothing. He proves that his code of honor applies to everyone, even his own team. This ruthless integrity is his North Star. With his conscience clean and his principles rock solid, he turns his back on the drama and prepares for his next and ultimately final war. He heads back to the one place that can't be lied to, the south face of Annapurna. This wall is a killer that punishes the slightest mistake. It is so steep and unstable that avalanches roar down the chute with the frequency and violence of a subway train. Merely getting to the top isn't enough for a man like Park. He wants perfection. He cranks the difficulty dial up to the max, choosing a strategy so dangerous it makes other veteran climbers gasp. He says no to oxygen bottles that numb the pain. He says no to the Sherpas who carry the heavy loads. This is pure, unadulterated Alpine-style man against mountain. In the autumn of 2010, Park and his squad launch their audacious attack. They claw their way up to 7,000 meters, fighting through wind that hits like a hammer. The summit is tantalizingly close, practically within grabbing distance. But Annapurna is cruel. She waits until the last second to show her teeth. In a heartbeat, the sky turns black, turning the slope into a blinding, icy coffin. Park's survival instinct screams at him, "Take one more step, and you die." He makes the gut-wrenching call to bail out, but as he rappels down, he glares back at that wall. It is not over. He vows to return and finish the job, but Park isn't stupid. He knows he is dancing with the devil. He openly admits that his body is aging. His engines are slowing down, and statistically, every time he rolls the dice, the house is more likely to win. In a haunting interview, he drops his manifesto, "I will explore and climb until my last breath." A tiger can't survive in a zoo, it needs the jungle. Danger is the only air Park knows how to breathe, and he is willing to pay the ultimate tax for it. Autumn 2011. Park stands in the shadow of the south face once more. He keeps the circle tight, just 2 men roped to him. These aren't hired guides. They are Shin Dong-min and Kang Ki-seok, his climbing sons. They are young, distinctively strong, and loyal to their captain beyond reason. They conquered Everest together, and now they face the monster, Annapurna. Park's battle plan is bordering on suicidal, a single non-stop sprint up the vertical face. You have to understand, by 2011, Annapurna has a reputation as a serial killer. The math is terrifying. 30% of those who try to climb it die trying. With a 3-man team, the statistics suggest one of them is already a walking ghost. They budget 6, maybe 10 days for the vertical siege. There are no backup camps, no oxygen tanks, and no Sherpa safety net to drag them down if things go south. They are completely alone. Their packs are stripped to the bone. At that altitude, a candy bar feels like a brick, and extra weight is a death sentence. They carry only what keeps them alive. Park, who was cautious enough to retreat a year ago, has hardened his heart. Staring up at the kilometers of vertical ice, he utters words that now sound like his own eulogy. He swears he will not turn back halfway this time. It is no longer just a sport. It is a crusade for honor, a desperate need to silence the ghosts that have haunted him for a year. Early October. They walk away from the warmth of base camp and step onto the glacier. With every crunch of crampon on ice, the world of the living fades further behind them. For days, they drift upward like phantoms, stealing meter after meter from the mountain. They breach the 7,000-meter mark, the point where the atmosphere is too thin to sustain life. But instead of a victory lap, a trap snaps shut. The weather window slams close. A blinding whiteout erases the world, but the cold is the least of their worries. The mountain literally begins to fall apart. Massive boulders rain down from above. October 18th, 1600 hours. The radio at base camp spits static, and then the captain's voice cuts through. They have been pushed back down to 6,400 meters. He sounds calm, almost too calm, but behind his voice is the terrifying roar of wind and the thunder of shattering stone. Park gives the sitrep the rockfall is relentless. Going up is suicide. The mountain is actively trying to kill them. He swallows his pride and makes the toughest call of his life: abort. He has to break his sacred vow to never retreat because he has Shin and Kang to think about. He has buried friends before. He refuses to bury his sons. They trigger an emergency descent, but the mountain has changed shape. The path down is a labyrinth of horror. Where an ice bridge stood yesterday, there is now only a gaping black abyss. The radio signal starts to chop, fracturing their sentences into meaningless noise. Then cutting through the static comes Park's final chilling transmission. It is a question thrown into the void. How do we cross this? And then silence. The words hang there, a heavy final epitaph for the tiger of the mountains. It becomes immediately clear that they've run into something catastrophic, maybe a massive crevasse suddenly slicing through their path, or a shelf of ice sheared off by a slide. That frantic phrase turns out to be their final transmission. After those words hang in the air, the radio cuts out, completely plunging the line into dead silence. Down at base camp, the operators are screaming into the mic, calling for the tiger, calling for Shin, desperate for any sign of life. But the only response they get is the cold, rhythmic hiss of static. It feels like the mountain has just slammed a heavy iron door in their faces. After that last broken transmission about the crossing, Park's frequency goes dark forever. The team gathers around the receiver, huddled close, like it's a dying campfire. But the airwaves offer absolutely nothing. Nobody has the guts to turn the radio off. Not even for a split second, terrified that they might miss a faint click, a cough, or a jagged breath. The observers outside have their binoculars locked on the peak, and just after 1,600 hours, right when the signal died, they witness a nightmare unfolding. The south face actually begins to breathe, shifting and buckling under its own weight. Massive slabs of snow detach from the upper tiers, shrouded in the cloud layer where no one can see the trigger. These aren't minor powder spills. They are full-scale monsters, powerful avalanches capable of scrubbing the mountain clean. They reshape the entire white canvas of the route in seconds, obliterating any footprint, any rope, and any trace that humans were ever there. The first 24 hours are an agonizing blur. October 19th drags on like a lifetime. The sun comes up and goes down, washing the Himalayan peaks in soft pinks and purples. But for the crew stuck at the bottom, the landscape has lost all its majesty. Now it just looks like a crime scene. There is zero news. The silence grows physically heavy, pressing down on everyone's chest. Everyone at camp knows exactly what radio silence means when you're climbing in the light and fast alpine style. Park's team didn't pack heavy down sleeping bags for emergency bivouacs. They didn't carry extra fuel to melt snow for water. Their whole survival strategy was a gamble based on speed and perpetual motion, keep moving or die. For climbers strictly adhering to this style, stopping isn't just an inconvenience, it's a death sentence. Without the metabolic heat from active climbing, the body's core temperature plummets instantly in that thin, freezing air. By the morning of October 20th, the fragile hope that this was just a dead battery or a broken antenna disintegrates. A code red emergency is officially screamed across the camp. The Korean Alpine Federation wastes no time kicking the rescue machinery into gear. The search is on. Helicopters chop through the thin air, and Sherpas start racking up their hardware to push into the kill zone. The vibe at base camp flips instantly. The paralyzing wait is replaced by a chaotic storm of adrenaline and urgent preparation. The rescue teams are painfully aware that the mountain has a head start of nearly 2 days. With every hour that ticks by, the statistical chance of pulling anyone out alive evaporates. Still, they refuse to stop until every square inch of that wall is scanned. The rotors of the helicopters beat against the atmosphere, demanding an answer, but the mountain just stares back with icy indifference. The pilots are flying like absolute madmen, pushing their machines right up against the nose of the south face, risking their rotors clipping the cliffs. They scan the white chaos below, desperate to spot a tiny anomaly, a splash of color from a jacket, the fabric of a tent, anything. But Annapurna looks hauntingly pristine, as if nothing ever happened. The fresh snow that has been falling for the last few days acts like a perfect blanket, a cruel camouflage hiding the disaster. From the air, the hope of spotting survivors is crushed by the sheer magnitude of the destruction they see below. It's not just a slide, it's total devastation. The pilots look down and see only massive debris cones where the avalanche plowed through the slope like a celestial bulldozer, erasing every feature of the terrain. While the aircraft scour the skies, a quiet, gritty act of heroism plays out on the ground. A squad of elite Sherpa rescuers, the absolute best in the business, straps in to go up on foot. They are walking straight into the lion's den, climbing up to an altitude of 5,200 meters. Every single step is a roll of the dice, because the wall above them is still unstable, shedding rock and ice, threatening to bury the rescuers right alongside the missing team. These men aren't naive. They know in their hearts they are likely no longer searching for survivors. They are hunting for bodies. But the mountaineer's code is sacred. You do everything in your power to bring your brothers home. And then, in that endless, blinding expanse of white, they spot one chilling clue. It's not a backpack. It's not a radio. It is the tattered, frayed end of a climbing rope, frozen solid into the compacted snow right at the base of the wall. It's a grim discovery, but it finally allows the experts to reverse engineer the catastrophe and piece together the team's final seconds. The experts trace the trajectory and realize the rope leads deep down, straight into a chaotic fracture zone of the glacier riddled with massive crevasses. All the evidence points to one conclusion: a massive avalanche struck moments after that last call, sweeping the entire three-man team off the face of the mountain like they were nothing more than dust motes. The sheer crushing weight of the snow would have hurled them to the foot of the mountain and buried them instantly in one of the bottomless, icy chasms. By October 28th, the drama reaches its inevitable, heartbreaking finale. The operation leaders stare at the grim weather reports and look at the faces of their exhausted rescuers who are teetering on the edge of their own limits. To keep pushing in these conditions isn't bravery anymore, it's suicide. It would be knowingly sending more good men to die for those who are already gone. The call is made, and a heavy, suffocating silence descends over base camp. The search is officially terminated. The rescue teams break down their tents and begin the long trek back, leaving the south face to its eternal slumber. On that day, the official logbook records a single brutal line of text. Park Young-seok, Shin Dong-min, and Kang Ki-seok are presumed dead. The legendary Tiger and his loyal crew are now on their final unending expedition. But for the people waiting back in Seoul, the official end of the search doesn't bring any closure to the story. The reports are filed, the helicopters land, and the rescuers go home, but Park's family is left suspended in an agonizing limbo. There is no body to bury, no grave to visit, nowhere to lay a bouquet of flowers, just a hollow emptiness, and a set of GPS coordinates on a map of Nepal. 5 years of silence drift by. Then in 2016, the son of the legendary climber decides it's time to fill that void. His name is Park Young-min. He is 22 years old, and he has spent his entire life growing up in the massive shadow cast by the great Tiger. Now he feels a magnetic pull, a duty, to look the mountain that took his father directly in the eye. It's not a decision he takes lightly. Young-min isn't a pro climber. He's just a regular guy who has to undergo intense, specialized training just to survive the trek to base camp. In August, he touches down in Nepal. He stands at the foot of Annapurna's south face, cranes his neck back, and stares up at that same colossal wall of white. Accompanied by a small support crew, Young-min combs through the accessible sections of the glacier, searching for answers. He is hunting for any sign, any tiny hint, a bright scrap of Gore-Tex, a piece of twisted metal, anything that the ice might have spit out over the years. But the mountain guards its secrets with terrifying jealousy. The expedition finds absolutely nothing. Annapurna has tucked the Tiger and his team safely away under millions of tons of ice, determined to keep them for herself forever. You'd think this failure would break the young man's heart, but strangely the opposite happens. Standing there in the thin air surrounded by eternal snow, Young-min finds a profound sense of peace. He realizes that his father wasn't lost. He was left in the one place on Earth where he felt truly alive. With a maturity that surprises everyone, the son speaks the words that bring this saga to an emotional close. I'm not disappointed that we didn't find anything because he loved Annapurna. He accepts the mountain's decision. His mother, the widow Hong Gyong-hui, stands right beside him. In this, she is an incredibly strong woman who admits that for her whole life, every time she watched her husband pack his bags, she believed he'd come back. But deep down in the back of her mind, she always knew the mountain might eventually win. She doesn't blame the weather, the team, or the gods. The family understands that for a man built like Park Young-seok, fading away in a quiet old age tucked in a warm bed would have been unnatural. It would have been a betrayal of his wild soul. He left this world exactly the way he lived in it, pushing the absolute limit, chasing a magnificent dream, and dissolving into the very eternity he was so passionate about conquering. While Annapurna covers the climber's last tracks with fresh powder, Seoul is plunged into deep mourning. On November 4th, 2011, the capital city grinds to a halt to say goodbye to its hero. The Memorial Hall at Korea University Hospital is overflowing with white chrysanthemums, but the air is thick with a surreal feeling. It is a funeral with no casket, a wake with no body. It is a symbolic farewell for men who found their final resting place miles above the clouds. The people come in an endless river. More than 4,000 mourners, from high-ranking government officials to wide-eyed schoolchildren, approach the altar to bow their heads before the portrait of the smiling captain. This isn't just a funeral for a famous athlete. It's a farewell to an icon of national willpower. Korea understands it has lost a man who proved season after season that the human spirit refuses to accept limits. But Park's memory isn't frozen in granite tombstones. It lives on in kinetic energy. 8 years later, in 2019, the Park Young-seok Climbing Center officially opens its doors in Seoul. This building isn't a quiet, dusty mausoleum. Here, the air is filled with the metallic click of carabiners and the laughter of young kids scrambling up the climbing walls. Park always dreamed of raising a new generation of explorers, and this center is that dream made concrete and steel. He continues to teach, even though he's gone. His philosophy of the wild tiger that loses its soul when trapped in a cage of safety has moved from old interviews into the pages of school textbooks. He has evolved into a national symbol of courage, a permanent reminder that life isn't measured by the number of years you breathe, but by the intensity of the fire you burn. Park Young-seok went out exactly as he lived, on a high note, without looking back. and without compromising a single inch on his dream. He didn't vanish into nothingness. He simply dissolved into the landscape he loved the most. Now his name is inextricably tied to the wind, the snow, and the biting cold of the high Himalayas. He remains there, perched on that great wall, an eternal sentinel, a pioneer who just decided to embark on one last infinite expedition, leaving behind a map of his incredible journey for the rest of us to follow.